Hello everyone, welcome to the World Carnivorous Plants Day for 2022. My name is Geoff Mansell from Exotica Plants in Australia, and I've been asked to put together a short presentation on Nepenthes, nomenclature and breeding. I hope you enjoy what I've put together. Thank you. Basically, here at Exotica Plants we use two internationally recognised forms of nomenclature for Nepenthes with a little bit of a twist. We use the International Code of Nomenclature for algae, fungi and plants, which is for most plants, it's called the ICN, and the International Code of Nomenclature for cultivated plants, the ICNCP. As such, the genus, species and natural hybrids are always written in italics. A natural hybrid always has a small x before the name, also in italics, and no space before the name. For example, a species is named as such. Nepenthes is a genus, a space, and then the species name, in this situation Nepenthes lowii. In a natural hybrid, Nepenthes is a genus, the natural hybrid is named Trusmadiensis, and it is written as such. The genus name can be shortened to a capital letter, then a full stop, and then a space before the species hybrid name, for example, Enfusca, as written there. Now we have the horticultural hybrids. The early horticultural hybrids that were named before the Grex and cultivar systems came into play were written with the genus and hybrid name in italics. The hybrid name was also written with a capital first letter. The X before the name was not required. There is some confusion surrounding the naming of these early hybrids, as some seem to be a single plant and then others were the whole progeny of the cross. An attempt to clarify this was printed in the ICPS newsletter, Volume 8, March 1979. For example, written here, Nepenthes marcesiana, which is a horticultural hybrid, all in italics with the capital M before the hybrid name. We've adopted a similar system of exotic plants with changes including English text for the Grex, or the progeny of the crossing, is what a Grex is, name, and the cultivar system. This is basically the ICNCP nomenclature. Now I'd like to speak about Grex nomenclature. A Grex was introduced specifically for naming orchid hybrids. A Grex is all the resultant progeny of a horticultural cross. A Grex can be named and all progeny from that Grex is called the same name. Several years ago there was an international Grex registry started for Nepenthes breeding. Although this was a good idea on paper, we found that collectors still preferred to know the full parentage of the cross. However, we found the use of Grexes, especially for commercial pot plant sales, was ideal and used it as such. It is written the same as a horticultural hybrid. As an example here, we have one of our popular pot plant varieties, Nepenthes gothica. Nepenthes gothica is a hybrid between the specific form of Nepenthes maxima and Nepenthes sibianensis. Next we move on to cultivars, naming of cultivars. Cultivars, or which is short for a cultivated variety, a cultivar is a horticulturally significant plant that can be selected from a Grex, a horticultural hybrid. There can be many cultivars selected from a Grex. In fact, all can be named as separate cultivars if desired. The cultivar name is written after the parent's name in normal text and enclosed in single inverted commas. Examples are as follows: a species Grex and a cultivar selected, for example, Nepenthes ventricosa, red leather. Red leather is a species cultivar name. Nepenthes saber, dark cherry, is a hybrid cultivar, and that is how it is written there. Now we move on to horticultural hybrid nomenclature. Horticultural Nepenthes hybrids can be primary hybrids, which consist of two parents of separate species, and complex hybrids which have more than two parents and can have many parents, which are distinguished using various brackets in the naming. These are written as follows, with the female parent always written first. For example, Nepenthes truncata, which is the female parent and one species, cross nebularum. This is a primary hybrid with the two species, Nepenthes truncata cross nebularum. Nepenthes, the next one is a complex hybrid, Nepenthes veitchii cross maxima, which is the female parent, which is the one parent, and cross Nepenthes adrianii. This creates a complex hybrid. And an example here of a very complex hybrid is one we bred recently, Nepenthes Rocco Exotica cross Boschiana, which is the female, cross Rocco cross Zachariana cross Spectabilis cross Trusmadiensis. This is quite a complex hybrid and shows the use of all the brackets, Grex and cultivar nomenclature. Next we'll move on to a couple of terms that we see used around the world in different discussion groups and everything, the terms clone and variant. It's important to note that the above terms are used to describe different forms of Nepenthes plants, Nepenthes varieties as such, and many times we've seen these terms misused. The term variant is correct when used to describe different plants from a Grex. It is describing the variations of the plants seen in the Grexes. These are genetically different from each other, but can be from the same seed batch or Grex. The term clone means that it is genetically the same plant. This can only be achieved from stem cuttings of the parent plant or cloning by means of in vitro culture of that single plant. I'll just move on to breeding and hybridization. Primary hybrids. When two different species are crossed together, this is called primary hybridization, and the resultant progeny are primary hybrids. In our 30 plus years of Nepenthes breeding, we observed that primary hybrids show little variation to each other in the progeny, in the Grex. Complex hybrids. Crossing of Nepenthes plants with more than two species creates what are termed complex hybrids. These can become quite complex, with some of our latest crosses, for example, having up to 9 parents. As can be expected, with the increase in the number of parents, an increase in the variation of the progeny is observed. Next section I'd like to talk about is regarding the term intragression. We've considered it over the years and come to the conclusion it's just hybridization. But it's surprising how it's been used over the years to explain hybrids in species. As an interesting observation we've made over the years with hybridization is that if there is any noticeable variation in the progeny of a primary hybrid, at least one of the parents is not the true species. If a parent is not the true species but looks similar, this is termed botanically as intragression. This means that in a wild population of species, hybridization has occurred and subsequent backcrossing with the parent species has taken place. This can give the said progeny both very similar and contrasting traits to the parent species, as it is still a complex hybrid. A good test to prove the integrity of a species is by primary hybrid crossing. If one of the parents has proven itself to be true by previous breeding, the new species can be crossed with it and the resultant progeny examined for variation as they grow. We've observed intragress species being sold over the years as a true species by many photos that are displayed worldwide on the many carnivorous plant websites and forums. In 2008, I presented a presentation at the ICPS conference in Sydney on this subject to show the contrasting plants that were still termed the same species by some taxonomists and growers in the then recently discovered Nepenthes platychila. As can see by the photos, this is quite contrasting, and to us it's just a simple matter they are hybrids. As a test, we continued this further. We bred these two contrasting plants together, and below us photos of some of the progeny. And I think they speak for themselves, even at the lower picture stage. To us, they are complex hybrids, or I think they're a bit diverse to be primary hybrids, and we speculated that they hybridised with Nepenthes zachariana or Nepenthes veitchii. Those traits, as the plants grew, became more and more evident, as can be seen here. As can be seen, as the progeny matured, it seemed to be the case that the parents they hybridised with were somewhere along the line N. zachariana and or Nepenthes veitchii. You can see by these photos that, in our observation, that these are far removed from the species then described as Nepenthes platychyla. We then decided to experiment more and purchased another plant that was from tissue culture and propagated from the same seed batch that our two original plants came from. After it matured, it could be seen that it was more like the described species, Nepenthes platychyla. What we then did is we bred our original female plant with this plant as it was male when it matured. We had our doubts about its purity and that of the progeny, but it was the best we had to work with. The progeny produced from this cross was a lot better than the previous one. As can be seen, this is more like the description of Nepenthes platychyla, and you could understand that that would be the case. There were still some anomalies in the progeny of the breeding of our original female with this male, tissue cultured male, and some of them grew up and it seemed like, again, that they were zachariana in a complex hybrid. Also observed some were starting to approach what we understood as a described species, Nepenthes platychyla. And the results here of the progeny, again, speak for themselves. You can see a range of the traits of what was understood as Nepenthes platychyla, and also the traits of some of the hybrids. Obviously the bottom left there, that zachariana, or it might have been dactylifera, I believe comes from the same area. And you see the various peristome sizes from platychyla. Again, that fluctuation to us is hybridization, or as termed in the scientific circles as intragression. What we then did with careful selection, we kept a group of plants which from this grex which became our breeding parents, with the aim to breed as true as possible to the species as we could. While this has worked well, we still have in the back of our mind the thought of an anomaly turning up. Some of our breeding stock are pictured below. You see the female pictured on the left and the male pictured on the right. To me, these pretty much fit the description of platychyla, and even though they may not be 100% pure as a species, and it might be an anomaly that's thrown every now and again, most of what we have bred from these plants seem to be pretty stable in their characteristics that describe Nepenthes platychyla. And also from a horticultural view, these are what collectors would be looking for in the species of Nepenthes platychyla. This wasn't the end yet. As another experiment, we decided to breed plants from the two original grexes, ones that display the most obvious zachariana traits, or zachariana-like traits, together to see if the traits of platychyla would dominate, or would the progeny keep reverting back to zachariana-like species. These are photos of the two parents used from the two different grexes, a lower and upper picture on the left of the first plant and an upper picture on the right. Below you could see their variation, but the progeny seems to be maintaining Zachariana-like traits strongly. Here's just some of the many seedlings. We also found, surprisingly, when we bred the plants that I would classify as nearly pure Nepenthes platychila, the platychila traits are very strong in the hybrids, and the large peristome is always displayed in the hybrids, and to see that these ones reverted back to Zachariana, it just shows you how, or shows us how strong the Zachariana parentage in these hybrids actually was. Now I realise that this is just one species that apparently grows with quite a few other species, and as such hybridization would be expected. Interestingly though, however, a few years ago we received seed of Nepenthes paluanensis, which I believe grows quite isolated, with the only recorded hybrids being with species believed to be Nepenthes philippinensis. We germinated many seeds and have grown the plants to a size where traits can be distinguished. Now this really surprised us when we saw the progeny grow to the actual hybridization or the variation in what was supposed to be true paluanensis. Here's some photos will just show the variation. Now we have seen this occur in quite isolated species over the years, and to us this points to the ability of pollen to travel great distances. There must be some sort of mechanisms in play to keep the species pure in habitat, but in horticulture we don't have these same mechanisms in play, so we can see the resultant hybridization of these species even in remote areas. Whether the pollen can be carried on the wind, animals travel around from mountain to mountain, birds for example, I don't know, but the progeny is evident, as can be seen by the photos here, that hybridization does occur very readily even in isolated species. As I mentioned, it is well known that Nepenthes species hybridize readily in habitat, yet very few of these hybrids are seen in the wild. In cultivation, though, without these limiting factors, it is a different story where it can be seen that in a lot of cases hybrids are prolific in a seed spray. On a conservation note, there has been talk of introducing tissue cultured Nepenthes back into the wild. All I can say in this matter is I hope the breeders have a good eye. It'd be a shame to ruin any species habitat by introgressed species being introduced back into the wild. Mentioning a good eye is also needed for breeding Nepenthes, especially in a horticultural setting where the aim and our aim is to breed for attractive or interesting attributes. Going back many years, the attraction for growers of Nepenthes species was mainly their carnivory, an interesting growth habit. It was rare to hear any comments about Nepenthes species claiming their beauty. Well, things have now changed along these lines, and it's common now to hear terms beautiful and stunning, and the like being applied not only to the pictures but also at times the attractive foliage. Some of the Nepenthes peltata hybrids, for example, have quite dark red leaves and dark underneath the leaves. They are very attractive in themselves. In fact, people have said, geez, those leaves are nice, ignoring the pictures, which makes us laugh at times. Here's a few photos of some of what we've created over the years. Thank you, and I hope everyone has a great day and has found this very interesting. Just on another note, you can see that it's Nepenthes veitchii on the far left. That is a cultivar, or could be selected as a cultivar, that's horticulturally bred. It's a pure species. The plant in the middle is Nepenthes truncata cross veitchii, and interestingly the plant on the end is a Nepenthes platycola hybrid. Again, the strong dominant traits of platycola are evident in that hybrid. Again, on the far right here is another platycola hybrid, and you can see that peristome, that wide peristome platycola is known for, is quite evident even in complex hybrids using Nepenthes platycola. Thank you.
The International Carnivorous Plant Society wants you to be successful with your plants. We welcome growers just getting started all the way through professional scientists. We started an annual World Carnivorous Plant Day to celebrate these spectacular plants. Take a look around our website and you'll find historic documents about carnivorous plants, growing guides, free educational resources, and more. Have questions? Ask. We don't bite, but our plants do.